네. Hello. 저 사람들이 아직 그 사용자가 미디어 키지 않은 것 같습니다. 대선님 가운데를 이렇게 해주시고.
안 했어요?
네. 바쁘시죠, 대선님 요즘?
나도 이제 강의 끝나서 이제 뭐 채점만 하면 돼.
네. 저도 막 채점 받았습니다. Hello. Hi there. I can hear you.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi, we're just waiting for the moderator. So before we start, so let's just wait for a bit.
All right.
Thank you.
그냥 몇거 막 가르쳤어요?
2개 있습니다.
어떤 서브젝트?
예, 시작해서 근데 저쪽 마리오이너가 끝냈나 봐요.
하잖아요?
이제 전 컴퓨팅 센터 친구가 스타피오로코를 이제 했고 기다려달라.
청소년
이게 저 사람이 하기 나름이에요. 보이기도 하고 안 보이기도
제가
하고.
이제 한 번도 안 봤거든요.
완전 처음엔 보였어.
처음에?
뼈대서. 그리고 이제
저희한테 나왔나요?
코호스트로 바꿔서 하나는 학부는 정치사야 되고요. 대학원은
정치사야?
네, 하나는 이제 방법론. 대학원에서 민주에 와서 논문 주제 잡는 거부터 어떻게 프로포즈를 쓰고 그 프로세스를 쫙 써요.
방법론이 힘들지.
근데 뭐 제가 하는 건 뭐 대량 방법론이나 이게 아니라 그러니까 어떻게 네가 연구 방식을 갖고 있는 거를 리서치나 퀘스천으로 바꿀 수 있느냐 그걸 하는 거니까 이게 익숙하지가 않으니까요. 내가 볼게요.
이거 어디 가서 하죠?
이걸 바꿨어요, 전체를. 의자를 전체를 바꿨어요.
아니, 그러니까 제가 선생님 편하게 앉으시려고 여자 한
해보죠. 대사님 옆에 쭉 가고 있었어.
아직 나의 시작이 안
아직 그때 뭐라 있죠? 안 왔대?
여기에 보는 사람들이 이제 참석돼가지고 모의고사도 여기 다 나오거든요. 여기가 그 필근대 그 대교수님? 계신 것 같아요. 여기 요분이 이들이 한 분이랑
아직 시험이 안 됐구나. 그쪽에서는 발표 안 해?
필리핀데요?
음.
네, 그쪽은 안 하고
안 하겠다.
저희 쪽. 근데 계속 모델처럼 매주 바쁘니까 외관 테스트를 먼저 해야 돼서 시간이 오래 걸려요.
점이 안 나와.
네, 조금
크더라고. 크게 나와.
여기 볼까요?
아니요, 그게 아니라 초점이 안 맞는 것 같아요.
내가 움직이는 이번에 내가 새로운 경험 많이 한다. 그 PPT로 저기 유튜브에 올리는 식으로 한번 하다가 순서하고 야 이러다가 우리 얼굴 못 보고 끝난다 그래서 줌 강의도 한번 해보고 그 줌 강의가 좋죠.
너무 높은데. 혹시 의자 불편하세요? 너무 낮거나.
아니 괜찮은데? 이거 틀려요 이게?
의자가 예전에는 좀 더.
아니, 저 의자가 바꿔드릴까요?
그렇고.
이게 항상 하게 그래가지고 오히려 조금 의자가 바뀌었어요. 네. 그게
이거 편하네.
네, 그게 다 나으시죠.
원래 다 의자예요.
예. 근데 지금 그게 수리하러 가서 아니에요. 수리는요? 네, 이거 수리를 해가지고 어디 갔는데?
근데 얘를 바꾸는 거야.
아예 이거? 그냥 그거 버려주면 바꿔요. 버려주는 게 아니라 진짜? 싱가포르만 버리는 거고 나머지는 아니에요? 여기 있는 게 너무 어려운데.
저희도 한번 마이크를 한번 해보자고 하면서 뭔가 얘기하시면 될 것 같아요.
Hello, can you hear me?
왜 말이 안 지?
Hi. 여기 음이 소거됐다 이쪽. 이거 해제.
내가
여기 아니야?
너무 크니까.
음.
소리 잘 들리죠?
Hello. Hear me? Hi.
Hello, good afternoon, Ambassador.
How are you?
Doing fine, sir. How about you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, sir.
So we start on time.
Yes, sir. Hello, good afternoon, Ambassador.
How are you?
Doing fine, sir. How about you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, sir.
소리가 늦게 나오는 거. So you start on time?
Yes, we will start on time, sir.
아, 이제.
Yes, sir.
Hi, yes.
How are you? Doing fine, sir. How about you?
Nice to meet you. 소리가 늦게 나오네. Start on time?
Yes, we will start on time, sir. Yes, sir.
Hi, yes. 이거는 이제 뒤로 넘어가고. 응? 백으로 가면은. 응?
오늘 아니면
아,
일상 그냥 하다가
보통? 시간이랑 딱 맞출 때.
근데 소리가
어.
나중에 떨릴 수 있어서 내가
어.
얘기를 해주셔서
How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay, great. So you are with the Korea Research Center.
I joined UP Korea Research Center's events. Yes.
이게 타임렉은 없죠.
소리가
So I can hear you very well.
Sir, how is it there in South Korea? Is everything going back to normal?
Yes, so looks like. And, yesterday, as you know, the 70th anniversary of the Korean War,
Ah, yes, yes.
big celebration,
Mm-hmm.
and the president is sending notes of thanks to the countries that sent their troops to Korea, including the Philippines, of course.
Yes, of course.
So I'd like to, when we start this session, starting with the mention about yesterday's anniversary,
Mhm.
and sending the Korean peoples, including me, the deepest gratitude for all the sacrifice made for Korea by young people.
Mhm.
So are you interested in North Korea?
Yes, that's actually one of my research interests. Yes.
Oh,
Mm.
so what area of North Korea are you more?
Actually, I was really concerned about the incident at Kaesong. The Joint Liaison Office was demolished. So I'm really curious of how would that affect the trajectory of inter-Korean relations. Yes, I believe this topic is really relevant. So I'm really happy that you're here with us today, sir.
Okay, that's everybody's wonder, but
Mhm.
North Korean behavior sometimes quite unpredictable. But we guess North Koreans are on the great economic strain these days because of economic sanction.
Yes.
They want to get some attention outside. And, so we spent lots of money to build that building.
Yes.
It's ashes, instant. So what a waste.
Yes.
So I'm sorry that that's the way they express their concern and the way to draw attention of others. So we think it is because of their economic difficulties.
Yes.
Sanctions.
Actually, that was one of the main key points we had in last week's version of the webinar with KRC with Dr. Lami Kim. I think she discussed the transition of wealth of North Korea to the new middle class. So I think that's very interesting.
Yes, so that's what things are happening in North Korea. So quite 그래? 조금 가까이. So that was a thing unforeseen in the past. Now the phenomenon, the new capitalist class emerging in North Korea. But their legal status, there are ambiguities about it.
Yes.
So what kind of role will they play is another question. And how long the North Korean leadership allowed their operation, to what extent, just in giving them full freedom. It may decrease the role of the state further, and so there is a subtle balance maintained between the state system and the market, and they want to have some red line in a sense, and, so that the state would not be encroached upon by the market. That's don't know for sure. Maybe the government itself don't know where is the red line. So it's just 그래? 볼륨을 더 늘려? 이게 시간이 됐는데? Okay, shall we stop?
Yes, I'll just double check. Yes. Okay, I've been given the signal to start. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to the fourth and final installment of the Korea and Asia webinar series. This webinar is co-organized by the University of the Philippines Korea Research Center and the Seoul National University Asia Center. I am Antonio Miranda from the University of the Philippines Diliman, and I will be your moderator for today's online event. We are delighted to welcome our participants who are affiliated with the academe, government, and private sector. Before we begin our program, we would like to remind our viewers on some house rules. All participants are joining this webinar on listen-only mode. You may send your questions and comments throughout the presentation and open forum by clicking the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. If possible, please introduce yourself with your name and affiliation when raising questions. For this webinar, we will be discussing North Korea's future and its implications on Northeast Asia's way forward, as well as ASEAN's role in spurring multilateral security cooperation. In light of the recent developments in the Korean Peninsula, it is timely for us to examine the role of the ASEAN-Korea Dialogue Partnership in inducing meaningful changes in North Korea's behavior and assess the contributions of ASEAN in setting the standards for regional cooperation that can be emulated by Northeast Asia. Before we introduce our distinguished guest speaker today, please allow me to provide a brief background of the organizers of today's program. First, the UP Korea Research Center was launched on April 2016 to provide Filipino scholars and researchers with opportunities to widen their interest in Korean studies. The center conducts various academic and cultural activities for scholars and professionals, and serves as a university-wide hub that promotes and develops Korean studies in the Philippines. For more information and updates on UPKRC, you may visit their Facebook page at www.facebook.com/UPKRC. Second, the Seoul National University Asia Center is a research and international exchange institute in Seoul, South Korea. Launched in 2009, the center's mission is to be a global hub of Asian studies by integrating regional and thematic studies on the Asia and the world. It has laid a strong foundation for its mission by facilitating a wide range of activities. It has also built networks of Asian scholars and nurtures next-generation academics. You may visit their website at snuac.snu.ac.kr for more information and updates. This afternoon, we are privileged to have our guest speaker who will share his invaluable insights on the future of North Korea and its implications for regional security cooperation in Northeast Asia, with a focus on ASEAN's role in the process. Our guest speaker today is a retired career diplomat and is currently a visiting scholar at the Seoul National University Asia Center. He is also a visiting professor at Yonsei University Wonju campus. He served as the Korean ambassador to Kazakhstan and Israel. After retiring in 2015, he became the executive director of the Korea Africa Center in Seoul. He completed his bachelor's degree in economics in Seoul National University and master's degree in war studies at King's College in London, United Kingdom. Without further ado, to deliver his presentation, let us all welcome Ambassador Il-soo Kim. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you very much for your very kind introduction. And it is my great honor to participate in this seminar organized between the Philippine University and the Seoul National University in the between to Korea Research Center and Asia Center here. And today's topic is North Korea's future. And today is the June 26th. And that reminds me that yesterday was the 70th anniversary of Korean War. One of the most bitterly fought war over 3 years, resulting in 3 million casualties and so on. So whenever this occasion comes in hand, we Korean people send notes of thanks to all nations that dispatched their young soldiers to South Korea's rescue at the time of its great crisis. And that, of course, includes Philippines. And my deepest thanks to Philippine people who sent their young people and their noble sacrifice really saved Korea. And Korea now, as you know, has become a democratic and industrial country, and world's 11th or 12th largest economy. And it is quite an achievement, but that achievement would not have been possible without this noble sacrifice made by our friends all over the world. And on this occasion, before beginning my presentation, I would like to send gratitude, deepest gratitude to all nations that sent their troops to Korea during the Korean War. And among ASEAN countries, it was the Philippines and Thailand that sent their troops. And my special thanks to my friends, Philippine friends there. So today's my topic is North Korea. North Korea was aggressor in the war I just mentioned, and the war ended without changing the dividing line too much, and two Koreas remain technically at war for last almost 70 years. And in the meantime, Korea has developed that much, as I mentioned, and North Korea now came up again with nuclear bombs and posing great threat to Korean Peninsula, not only Korean Peninsula, but all over the world. So we are very much interested in what this North Korea is intending to do, and what is its future. So my the presentation today comprises three chapters. I mean, three items. First is North Korea's future, and second, implication of North Korean problem for Northeast Asia, especially in terms of its security cooperation organization. Excuse me. And also, my last part would be ASEAN's relevance to North Korean problem. Now let's start with North Korea's future. 좀 더 크게, louder. When we talk about North Korea, our first question is how North Korea has survived this much until now. Because the North Korean economic performance from the beginning was not so impressive. It was due to the innate inefficient nature of the socialist economy, but also they are overspending on defense. And there was political distortions, and North Korea chose to the system of autarky instead of engaging with the outside external trade. But the North Korean economy faced a real crisis at the time of the end of the Cold War, and witnessing the collapse of the Soviet Union and other Eastern Bloc countries, pundits and experts of North Korea talked about the early expectation of early demise of North Korea. So at the time, it was not a question of if, but it was a question of when and how. And even most conservative experts expect that North Korea will not last over, for example, 5 or 6 years. But at the time, really, North Korea was in a great, very dire situation. It was a period they call Others March, period of Others March. North Korea took pride in being autonomous and autarky economy, but actually they were very much dependent on the concessionary trade and support from a socialist bloc. When socialist bloc collapsed by the late 80s and early 90s, these economic ties were cut, and North Korea suffered shortages in currency, food, fuel, and that led to the deficit of electricity, and that brought down the operation rate of the factories. So their factories operated under even sometimes 50% of their capacity only, and because of lack of foreign currency, the factories industry do not get material for manufacture. So it was really a difficult period for North Korea. So according to statistics, North Korean economy not grew but declined all through the 1990s. So up until 1999, North Korea registered continuous minus growth. And the natural disaster in flood in 1995 and another flood and drought brought North Korea to the point of very severe food shortage and starvation resulted. And now we estimate that some 40, 50, 400 or 500,000 people died from starvation. And many people went across to China for survival, and the refugee problem started from then. So it was the first time that North Korea went out to ask assistance from international community, and that's why the North Korean experts predicted the collapse of North Korean system within a few years' time. It was revealed, later. We remember the 1994 agreed framework in Geneva between US and the PRK, and the US side somewhat intentionally procrastinated the construction of the light water reactor. They promised to build for North Korea, expecting that North Korea would collapse before the completion of a light water reactor. But now what happens after 30 years? North Korea is still there, and it is armed with nuclear weapons. And in the meantime, there have been two hereditary succession of power. In 1994, when Kim Il-sung died, and in 2011, when his son Kim Jong-il died. Now the leader Kim Jong-un is third generation Kim family third generation leader. So North Korea is more or less show their the normalcy in their statecraft. Now let's ask a question: why? How was it possible? Unlike other socialist countries, North Korea survived. In my opinion, the first thing we have to find the history of North Korea. Now, North Korea, there is not the democracy or civil society in their history. When we look at the North Korean history, it was a feudal society until Japan occupied it in 1910. There was a colonial rule. And when Korea was liberated at last in 1945, in North Korea, socialist dictatorship took the power. So from average North Korean's point of view, they have no memory whatsoever of democracy or civil society. So there is no culture of protest and no respect for freedom or human rights. So that's why, despite these great difficulties, North Korean population under strict control of North Korean government is just there. I mean, taking all these things as normal. That's why one of the reasons. So, for example, in case of Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, there were already some distant groups existing, and when the situation got really worse, the political situation deteriorated very quickly and collapsed. But North Korea, that kind of situation does occur. And second reason for North Korea's survival, despite all these difficulties, is indoctrination of ideology called 주체. 주체 literally means the self-reliance. It started with the benign purpose. I mean, they sought after the independent foreign policy, and but it decayed into a system of personal cult. So personal cults in North Korea became very pronounced by the end of 1950s and 60s. So by early 1970s, they completed this 주체 ideology system where the leader comes first above a party. You know, the socialist system, party is already doing leading role in the government. But in case of North Korea, it is a leader who is above party. So it's a party, leader party system. That's the uniqueness of North Korea. And how can you indoctrinate that kind of idea into the minds of North Korea? So they develop many strange theories, like I mentioned here, socio-political life theory, which is likening the state to a human body, organ, and the leader is the brain, and the party is the heart, and the people limbs. So in the body, the limbs follow the order of the brain without question. So full loyalty, full obedience to the leader. That's the norm expected of population under this ideology. This personal cult went to the extreme. Actually, in the 1950s, the Soviet Union and China criticized Kim Il-sung, personal cult centered on Kim Il-sung. And in the Soviet Union and China, there was a personal cult for Stalin and Mao Zedong. But that tradition was replaced by collective leadership after the death of these leaders. But in case of North Korea, personal cult get more serious, and it reached the theory of, I mentioned, this socio-political life. So your life is physical life is something, and your socio-political life is another, which can be guaranteed by your complete obedience and loyalty to the leader. So that's the indoctrination done to the Korean public. So according to some statistics, we have, the refugees from North Korea. They went to South Korea because they didn't like the North Korean system. But when we conduct surveys with them about their idea, about future idea and their leader, majority of them still have respect for Juche ideology and the leader. So indoctrination went to that extent. So it really helped North Korea to keep population under control. And I also think the geopolitical location of North Korea also helped too. China considers North Korea as a buffer state. I mean, stopping the outside force, especially the U.S. military might. And of course, China doesn't like nuclearized North Korea. But if China is asked to choose between nuclearized North Korea and no North Korea, then they would choose nuclearized North Korea. They don't like this period of the buffer state. I mean, separating them from U.S. military power. And North Korea has developed a very strict surveillance and control system on population. And there is no freedom. As I mentioned, it is a feudal society under social dictatorship. So people has no tradition of civil society and no idea what the freedom or human rights is like. So North Korea human rights is greatly abused. And and also this is done by the control of security organs in North Korea, and there is also weekly indoctrination session every Saturday. All North Koreans gather to hear the directive given by the leader, and also participate in a chant, and also criticize what they have done wrong. I mean, against the directive of a leader. So that kind of session it continues for the control of population. I heard from one of my North Korean defectors interesting story. He went to Korean church and participated in the service. And in the middle of the service, he felt like being in North Korea because the service order at the Korean church is almost same with what they did during the weekly indoctrination in North Korea. So chanting and hearing someone instead in North Korea, hearing the direction of a great leader and so on. So they even developed the 10 principles of Juche ideology, which is maybe a kind of parallel to the 10 Commandments of the Bible. So some people think that the North Korea Juche ideology originated from the idea of Christianity and followed the way of Christian worship and introduced the system into worshiping a great leader. So the human rights abuse in North Korea is quite rampant. And in 2015, United Nations Human Rights Council commissioned a report to the Commission of Inquiry on North Korean human rights. And the UN COI made public their finding in 2014. And they find the North Korean human rights abuse so serious and rampant. They recommended the Security Council to bring North Korean leadership to the International Criminal Court for the crime against humanity. Of course, it did not happen, but in the Security Council, there are supporter countries for North Korea. But at the level of United Nations Human Rights Council, that kind of recommendation was made, and we can examine, we can imagine what the human rights situation in North Korea is like. So what is the practical policy measures North Korea has taken to maintain their regime? First is the so-called military first policy. It was done by previous leader Kim Jong-il, and it is putting priority on military in managing the country, or mobilizing the military for the construction or other economic undertakings. It is a very extraordinary measure at the time of emergency by controlling the society by the force and the real physical force, military force, but it also intended to control the military itself, because the military has all the power in its possession. So it has a double purpose, and this military first policy worked. And second, the measures North Korea has taken, not willingly, but quite reluctantly, is the marketization. because of economic problems, the North Korean government couldn't do the so-called public distribution system anymore. So North Korean population, they couldn't get the necessary essential items for life, like food or other consumer goods, through the distribution system. And that's why many people died by starvation during the period. And people were kind of forced to seek their own way of life. And it was a commercial activity. So this market sprout up, quite spontaneously. And that's the only way for average North Korean to survive. And even North Korean government couldn't restrain that kind of commercial activity, because they themselves cannot, guarantee the life of ordinary people. So marketization was done in a massive scale, and North Korean government in July 2002, they make this marketization almost make it official. So allowing the market all of North Korea. That's when North Korea began to register positive economic growth, and that's the way North Korea managed to survive economically. But this marketization is good for guaranteeing the life of ordinary North Korea, but also very detrimental to the regime, because the marketization changed the mindset of people, not only economic structure and their loyalty, because they don't get nothing from government. Why do they have to be loyal to government? So if marketization continues too much, then North Korean authority knows that it will be a great threat to their regime. So after liberalizing the economic system in July 2002, North Korean authority tried to reverse it in 3-4 years' time, and the reversal of this marketization activities culminated in the currency reform in 2009. Currency reform was done under the pretext to decrease the inflation, but actually what was done was they set the ceiling of the money the ordinary North Korean people can exchange it into new currency. So it means all the money saved by ordinary Koreans through their market activities now confiscated by the government. So even in North Korea, I mean, the population under strict control of the government, the public couldn't tolerate it, and there is a great discontent expressed by North Korean people. We don't know in detail what happened, but what happened is we can prove is in February 2010, some months after, the person responsible for this, the government official responsible for this currency reform was shot, I mean, executed. So it just reflects the amount of discontent North Korean population felt about this abrupt, currency reform. So another major North Korea took was nuclearization. The nuclearization, we remember that the first nuclear crisis in North Korea started in the early 1990s, and it was dealt with the agreement between US and the PRK, the Geneva Agreement framework in 1994. But this Geneva Agreement broke down in 2002, and North Korea started to arm itself with nuclear weapons again. And their pretext for doing so is the U.S. hostility. U.S. is always interested in intervene North Korean affairs and may make military aggression to the pattern of the U.S. aggression of Iraq in 2003. So this under this pretext, despite the six-party talks that was done between 2003 and until 8 to solve this problem, North Korea became really a nuclear power, or self-appointed nuclear power. So they had some 6 nuclear bomb tests between 2006 until 2017, and in 2012 they declared that North Korea is a nuclear state and write it down in their constitution. So under North Korean constitution, North Korea is already a nuclear power. And that's one of the reasons why people are dubious about North Korea's really are ready to give up all its nuclear bombs. And in 2017, North Korea declared again that it has now completed its nuclear power by development of a delivery system, including ICBMs. So after many tests of ICBM that may reach the mainland US, North Korea declared the completion of their nuclear weapon. So this nuclearization is under the pretext of US hostility and to deter any aggression. But at the same time, this nuclearization is aimed at uniting the people and the show to the people the achievement of the great leader. Making North Korea arming itself with nuclear weapons. So that's the measure North Korea has taken. Now let's talk about North Korea now. Where is North Korea? North Korea survived this so-called Out March of 1990s, and because of marketization, they register positive growth in the 2000s. Along with the market, the external trade is also encouraged. So North Korea used to be a very closed economy, autarky type, but now North Korean economy is quite open to external ties, especially with China. So if we calculate the so-called, dependency on trade as a ratio of GDP, it is North Korea's trade accounts for about 40–50% of GDP, which is not, the figure of a closed economy. The North Korean economy is willingly or unwillingly is becoming more open to external trade ties. And the sign that marketization is really affecting North Korean society is the percentage of earning. Average North Korean household takes from market activities. It's 70%. Now, at this point, you may ask, where did you get these figures? And you are not allowed to visit North Korea and make this kind of survey. So we do it because we have 30,000 strong North Korean refugees residing in North Korea, in South Korea. And since 1990s, North Koreans are arriving in South Korea in great numbers, maybe around 2,000 annually. Last year, it was reduced somewhat to 1,000 level, but we have more than 30,000 North Koreans living in South Korea, and scholars are conducting survey on them about their lifestyle in North Korea. That's why we get some clue about what it's like, the real life situation, lifestyle in North Korea. So, but this marketization and North Korea's exposed to foreign trade, it entails in the income inequality and appearance of a new capitalist called 돈주, and it's a money holder kind of word in Korean, and but North Korean this market system is quite a balance between state and market. So market, the power is increasing, but the state is controlling and guarding against too much expansion of market. So there is a delicate balance made between them, and because marketization and the commercial activities, they are not, completely legal. When do their commercial activities, they have to pay a bribe to government officials or party elites. So corruption in North Korea is also becoming a common way of doing business, and we don't know how it will affect the discipline and the morale of North Korean bureaucracy. But that's also why even the appearance of this new capitalist class is not resulted in actual effective stratification, new stratification of North Korean society. Because, I mean, North Korean system is relying on the support of 5% of elites. And at the moment, rest of the population, North Korean authority, leave them alone and let them find their own lives. But if 5% of elites, mostly residents of Pyongyang, if they support us, then our regime is safe. So that's the kind of situation and kind of challenge faced by North Korea, and now they are taking this challenge more or less effectively. And so at this point, I'd like to talk a little bit about the North Korean class system. North Korea is a socialist country, and all people are supposed to be equal and equal income and so on and so on. But their population is classified into, by some standard, 40 or 50 different categories according to the loyalty to the regime. And the top 5%, they are just very much trusted people, but bottom 50 and some, they are very much unreliable people, and they have no chance of making advancement in North Korean society. In that sense, the North Korean society, although socialist, it resembles the feudal system to some extent. And so if we define socialist system, it is public ownership and planned economy and party dictatorship. In case of North Korea, this public ownership and planned economy is quite diluted. Why? Because of marketization. And only this Labor Party, the Communist Party. Korea is not the Communist Party, it's a Labor Party. Labor Party dictatorship is remain intact. It is compared to the case of China. China, they very radically transform and reform their economic system. So Chinese call it socialist market system. So the ownership and the planned economy is almost gone in China, but party take form hold on power. In case of North Korea, the reform is done partially, and the private ownership and the planned economy is the public ownership and the private planned economy. The characteristic of socialist system is very much diluted, but government still in full control of population. So that's quite a unique characteristic of North Korean society. But we don't know, how long this kind of balance and situation is sustainable. So what is the predicament of North Korea? The Juche system, as I mentioned, it is a guarantor of North Korean regime, and it's by ideological control, and also the physical control of the population is done by security organs in North Korea. But effective cure of innately inefficient socialist economic system lies in the real reform and opening in the style of China or Vietnam. But this opening and reform may expose North Korean population to outside influence and information, especially the revelation of existence of a prosperous and democratic South Korea. It is the gravest threat on North Korea. And denuclearization is necessary to normalize relations and get assistance from the US, Japan, and South Korea. But North Korea cannot, give up this nuclear weapon because they think it is detrimental to their regime survival. So North Korea is they can't do two things they should do because it is against their major goal of regime maintenance. And because of these two problems, nuclearization is because of that North Korea is under sanction, and because the reform and opening is impossible, and North Korean economy cannot be efficient enough, and the suffering is the destiny of the North Korean population. So that's the predicament. They want to do it, but it is harmful to themselves, so they maintain the current system at the sacrifice of average North Koreans. So now look at the prospect of North Korea's future. North Korean regime, as I mentioned, flawed with so many economic inefficiencies, political anachronism, and other contradictions. It would be reasonable to say it is quite doomed. But North Korea survived the August March of 1990s. And given that fact, we cannot say for sure. North Korea will go away anytime soon. And so marketization and nuclearization, it's giving some lifeline to North Korea. However, as I mentioned many times already, the partial reform, as in the case of Soviet Union, cannot cure the socialist inefficiency. And if you don't do it, then the system cannot be sustained. So that's why China completely changed their social system. But North Korea, as I mentioned, cannot do it because of, opening and reform would be detrimental, and there is a South Korea, prosperous South Korea. So as the dependency of people on government for their livelihood decreases, they tend to get less loyal to the government. Especially we have to pay attention to those North Koreans born after year 2000 who has no experience whatsoever of getting any benefit from government, so-called millennials, and their mindset is quite susceptible to new ideas and changes. And so if we do anything to change North Korea, then it's these millennial young people are our target, might be. Also, given extremely close nature of North Korean system and its high dependency on keeping people from outside influence for regime survival, the inflow of information will play a very crucial role in North Korea's either transformation or its complete collapse. So outside the influence and the information is quite important. It's a very gradual process, but there is something that really put them on North Korea. Also, as I mentioned, the geopolitical situation and China's presence, and China will come to the rescue of North Korea if North Korea faces real economic difficulties, which North Korea experiences at the moment because of sanctioning of United Nations Security Council sanctions on North Korea, and IMF and other economic agencies estimate that this economic growth -6%, which resembles the minus rate North Korea experienced during the 1990s. As North Korea gets more unstable, and likelihood of the explosion of regime increases, but we have to remember that North Korea is armed with a nuclear weapon. So what will happen to this nuclear weapon, and or what will the nuclear weapon if they really face some complete collapse? So that's the one thing, and that increased the uncertainty and also a threatening element for the peace of Northeast Asia. Now, a little bit to talk about the prospect of unification. In Korea, there is a debate going on about unification. And many people think about cost-benefit analysis. So, in order to unify with North Korea, how much do we have to pay? So let's just briefly compare it to the case of two Germanys. West Germany, their GDP was twice larger than that of East Germany, per capita income, I mean. And there was a 3-to-1 ratio in the size of population between the two Germanys. So it means 3 West Germans support 1 West German to become 2 times rich. That's the goal of North Korea, German unification. But in case of South Korea, the per capita income discrepancy between the South and North Korea is, according to the statistics, varies, but approximately 20 or 40 times larger. And our population ratio is 2-to-1. So it means 2 South Koreans have support 1 North Korean to become 20 times richer. So you imagine, how burdensome South Korea's unification cost would be. So that's why there is people allocating this cost-benefit analysis approach and making the unification process gradual process and aiming at long-term unification. In the meantime, we make North Korea prosperous enough and we get prepared for the eventual unification. But there is another school of thought in South Korea who claims that North Korea, then do we have to leave our brothers and sisters to suffer under that very unkind, undemocratic system for long? And we are one nation, and if we are unified, we have to pay costs, but there is also unification benefit. So we have to pressurize North Korea to change and update, accelerate the unification. So there is a two kind of debate going on, and but it is very serious. But this, what is for certain is that this scenario will happen in one form or another at some point, and either in the form of North Korea's explosion or gradual change in leadership in North Korea and more peaceful and gradual unification. But in whatever case, we have to deal with the three things in the unification with North Korea, which is it has to be peaceful. Two Koreas already fought a war, Korean War, very bitter one. And if unification is done by the war again, then this disaster for both Koreas. So peace is one condition. But another two condition is we have to make North Korean socialist economy have a smooth transition to a market economy. And we have to do some work to integrate North Korea. So it's a very arduous march again, if we have to do it again. But whether we like or not, it will happen. So it is better to get prepared and early, so that we can get the consequences more easily. Now, let's briefly talk about the North Korean problem and its implication in Northeast Asia security cooperation body. There is a so-called North Korean paradox. North Korea is Northwest Asia. It is the engine of global growth. So all major economic powers are located there, and economic interdependency among those nations in Northeast Asia increases. But there is also historical and territorial rivalries. So Northeast Asia remains one of the regions without any regional cooperation body like ASEAN. And no wonder, this area is where the world-class powers interact. And there are two Koreas. I don't think Koreas are world-class powers, but US, China, Russia, Japan to some extent are really great powers. And you imagine, you are in Philippines, and you also have the big powers in the neighborhood, China and so on. But in case of South Korea, we are neighbor of the most populous and the #2 economic power in the world, and the largest territorial country, Russia, and the strongest military power, United States, and the third largest economy, Japan. So imagine yourself in the midst of these giants. And so we also have a troublemaker in North Korea. So South Korea's geopolitical situation is not enviable by anybody. But so we just wonder, under these very dire circumstances, how Korea's achievement is possible. Sometimes, I think it's my personal view, sometimes the blessing comes in disguised form, in the form of curse. So Korea is cursed to be with the great giants. But to some extent, we also get benefits from the proximity of a big market in China, and the great source of capital in Japan, and also the security guarantor of the United States. So if we look at our situation that way, then it can be also very, very beneficial geopolitical location. But North Korea is, really not very much, giving us benefits. So how North Korean security cooperation and North Korean problem is related. So I'd like to mention the six-party talks that took place between 2003 and 2008. It was not intended that way, but it was the first security-related forum in Northeast Asia, comprising all players there: US, China, Russia, Japan, and two Koreas. And the six-part talks failed, and North Korea went ahead, developing their nuclear weapon. But in the middle of that talk process, in 2005, there is a so-called September 19 agreement. It was a culmination of six-party talks. In that agreement, which was not implemented, the North Korea promised to denuclearize itself, and US and Japan agreed to normalize relations with North Korea, and North Korea was also supposed to get economic assistance in return for its abandonment of nuclear program. And there was also talk of permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula. I mentioned two Koreas are still technically at war. because this situation is maintained only by a ceasefire agreement. And so replacing it with the peace agreement is something that should be done. And without it, normalization of relations between, especially US and DPRK, impossible, because two parties fought the war, and that warring relations has not ended legally. So they have to put it to an end before signing their diplomatic normalization. So, but along with these elements, there is a very interesting element, the last one, which is six parties agreed to explore ways or means to promote security cooperation in Northeast Asia. So it means the North Korean nuclear issue became a kind of focal point or a trigger factor in developing the idea of Northeast security cooperation. So, despite the failure of six-party talks, the agreement of 2005 remains the major legacy, and even United Nations Security Council, when it imposed sanctions on North Korea for its nuclear program, they cite this agreement. So, calling for the observance of this agreement North Korea made. And so that much is September 19, 2005 agreement is important. And it also shows the link between North Korea problem and the development of security cooperation organization in Northeast Asia. Now, lastly, I will talk about ASEAN's relevance to North Korean problem. Oh, with time. So, ASEAN is the inspires Northeast Asian countries because it's as a forerunner in managing regional cooperation. And ARF, the ASEAN Regional Forum, is the first security-oriented forum in Asia, and venue for a regular gathering for all major powers of the world. I mean, all powers, including EU. So it is a great achievement made by ASEAN. And also ASEAN catalyzed the formation of the trilateral summit between China, Japan, and Korea. So ASEAN Plus 3 process started in 1997, and in that setting, three countries in Northeast Asia met the summit. The leaders met regularly, and they agreed to develop their own trilateral summit. And it started in 2008, and three parties also agreed to establish trilateral cooperation secretariat in Seoul in 2011. So it's a great, achievement on the part of three countries in Northeast Asia. It's a first step in institutionalizing the cooperation organization among them. And it was made all possible by the urge and also in help of ASEAN. So in the sense, ASEAN plays a great role in the stimulating security cooperation body in Northeast Asia. ASEAN also initiated the East Asia Summit in 2005, and the participation expanded from ASEAN Plus 3 to three other countries, India, New Zealand, and Australia. And I remember some years later, the United States and Russia also participated. So this ASEAN East Asia Summit is also quite unique, where all countries, great players in this region participate. And let's look at the ASEAN-South Korean relations. Korea has become ASEAN's dialogue partner since 1989, and ASEAN-Korean Special Summit is taking place every 5 years since 2009. The last session of which took place in Busan last year. And ASEAN is South Korea's second largest trading partner, only after China. And also the ASEAN is the second largest destination of investment, only after the United States. So the economic ties between the two parties has expanded that much. And by some statistics, the trade volume between ASEAN and Korea increased some 20 times since 1989, when Korea became a dialogue partner of ASEAN, and the exchange of people is the 4th time. So, I mean, the relations between ASEAN and Korea on the increase in everywhere. And the Korean African Center was established in 2009 to promote economic, social, and cultural cooperation. So South Korea's government launched a new policy towards Southeast Asia in November 2017 called the New Southern Policy. And the slogan is people-centered, prosperous, and peaceful community, building this community between Korea and ASEAN. It is aimed at extending cooperation with ASEAN and plus India, and expanding the scope of cooperation to areas of security. And it is the kind of part of South Korea's middle power diplomacy, which with the like-minded middle powers of ASEAN. And it is also an attempt to spare some room for maneuver, diplomatic maneuver, in the midst of US-China rivalry. And by combining our forces as the middle power countries, the result would be quite limited because we are still middle power. But by doing so, we can at least expand our space for diplomatic maneuvering in relations with the great powers. And so the Korean government, I think, is also interested in getting some ASEAN help in probing North Korean problem. So ASEAN and North Korea also has a very good relations. Why? Because ASEAN and North Korea, they are members of a non-aligned movement, and ASEAN way is stressing the neutrality and non-interference in internal affairs and quiet diplomacy. And but North Korea is quite afraid of being ostracized when they participate in any forum. But in case of the ASEAN, they are less suspicious. And that's why North Korea started to attend the ARF since year 2000. And North Korea is a regular participant of that forum. And they are sending the foreign ministers, but also on the ministerial level seminars and meetings are taking place very regularly. So after the collapse of six-party talks, the ARF remains the only venue where former six-party members can meet regularly. That's also the importance of ARF. Now let's talk about ASEAN's relevance to North Korean problem. ASEAN has a Vision 2025, which is aimed at expanding the scope of ASEAN activities to issue of peace and security. And ASEAN is also harbinger of denuclearization in Asia. In 1995, it signed the Treaty on Southeast Asian Non-Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone, and it has some relevance to North Korean nuclear problem too. And we might think that Southeast Asia and Northeast Asia are quite far apart and geographically apart, but actually we are very closely linked. Look at the case of Kim Jong-nam, I mean, killed and assassinated in Kuala Lumpur, and also the Southeast Asia become a passage corridor for the North Korean refugees escaping North Korea via China. So any situation in Korean Peninsula will have a direct effect on South Asia. That's why ASEAN may have some interest in getting involved and giving some helping hand to the solution of the North Korean problem. All said and done, still ASEAN's mediation role for North Korea nuclear deal directly is not very easy because North Korea's insistence on direct deal with the US. The North Korea has tendency even sideline South Korea in its nuclear talks, although South Korea is under direct impact or influence of North Korean nuclear problem. So for ASEAN to get directly involved in as a mediator as North Korean nuclear issue is idealistic, but we have to be careful in considering this option in account of North Korea's position. But what ASEAN can do is the consistent persuasion of North Korea for denuclearization. So in that sense, observation of the UN Security Council sanction is so important. So all ASEAN members, I believe, are very observant. It is sanctioned and maintain that stature for solving North Korean issue. And personally, I think the contribution ASEAN can make to the problem of North Korea is engaging North Korea as a least suspicious or reliable partner, unthreatening partner, many dialogue mechanisms, and also I told you that the inflow of information and the changing people is the key to the real transformation of North Korea. So ASEAN can play a role in organizing people exchange programs, student programs, and I read some article that some ASEAN countries are now training North Koreans in the area of marketization. And I think that kind of activities would be a very good way to contribute to the change of North Korea. And so ASEAN's involvement in the North Korean issue is not surprising, and they will go on for some time. I mean, the first, the US DPRK summit took place in Singapore, second one in Hanoi. So Southeast Asia is becoming kind of neutral venue for two parties to meet. And that way, ASEAN is also playing a role in North Korean issue. So I took too much time, and I'm now open to a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Kim, for your very insightful and informative presentation. So right now we open the webinar for questions and comments. You may send your questions and comments through the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. If possible, you may also introduce yourself with your name and affiliation when raising your question. In the interest of time, please keep your remarks as concise as possible. So actually, sir, we have one pre-collected question that we received during the registration period. So one of them asked, how can North Korea survive the COVID-19 pandemic without the help of other Asian countries?
So we don't know for sure what the situation like inside North Korea in this pandemic situation, and I mean, in consideration of the situation of other countries, North Korea is not an infection, and but it doesn't reveal what's really going on inside North Korea. But if they need help, then we have to consider it in terms of UN sanctions. But I think even UN sanctions can allow any help for this pandemic victims. But North Koreans are not, I mean, showing any sign to reveal it, and so that's it.
Any questions from our attendees? Okay, while everyone's still trying to formulate their questions, is it okay if I throw in some questions as well? So you mentioned that the issue of unification is going to be very difficult. So how do you think can the two Koreas make compromises on the issue of reunifying the two Korea, on reunification, especially that there are issues on North Koreans being exposed to external information and influences?
So whenever the North-South Korea meet for summits, the first topic is how to do unification. So many the ways were discussed and even agreed. And but the thing is, whatever structure we agree on, there is a big difference between two Koreas and their political system. And we cannot live under, I mean, restrictive, repressive system of North Korea, and North Korean regime would not allow their people to be influenced by South Korea. So that's the one concern when we talk about unification. The other one is nuclear power. North Korea wants to possess. So that, I mean, that stops any talk or think about the unification. You know, I mean, if North Korea's nuclear power status recognized as the ninth nuclear power in the world, we have 5 countries plus Israel, I mean, India and Pakistan. If North Korea allowed to be official, then we have 3 options. One, we have to live under constant blackmail of North Korea. And at some point, North Korea may take over South Korea with their nuclear weapons. Not to be so, not to be in that situation, South Korea has to be totally dependent on nuclear umbrella provided by the United States. Korea, US, great allies, but I mean, relying completely on other party for our most precious value, security, is not something any responsible government can do. And third option is South Korea itself going nuclear too. But this is also a very complicated question. And so all three options are not, I mean, palatable to South Korea. I mean, so our goal is to have North Korea give up completely its nuclear weapons. Now, my personal view, but the North Korea pretend to, I mean, develop nuclear weapon under the pretext of the U.S. hostility. But just to think seriously, I mean, if North Korea doesn't have a nuclear weapon, then U.S. will invade North Korea, as it did in the case of Iraq or Afghanistan. I don't think so. I mean, the North Korea is supported by China, And any war in the Korean Peninsula will be disaster for all nations all around, including China and Japan, South Korea, of course. So North Korea is quite safe. So the purpose of their nuclear weapon is not really their self-defense. To some extent, yes, but more it is kind of getting the unity of population and loyalty of them, and also a kind of negotiation card. So without North Korea completely giving up its nuclear program, any the talk about unification is meaningless. So it's something we have to do or settle first.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador. We now have lots of questions here. Okay, so first from an anonymous attendee. So the question is, should South Korea and other Asian states surrounding the peninsula adopt an Asian-only approach with North Korea, considering certain actions with the US were not fruitful?
Excuse me?
So in the Q&A chat box, so one of the questions was, should South Korea and other Asian states near the peninsula adopt an Asian-only approach with North Korea? Meaning only Asian countries should participate in the peace process.
You mean excluding US and Russia?
Yes, yes. Considering certain actions with the US were not fruitful.
But the situation around the Korean Peninsula is quite complicated, and I mentioned the US. US is geographically outside the Asia, Northeast Asia, but it has its presence in the form of US troops in South Korea and Japan, and it is also our closest ally, and so the US participation, even if it is outside Asia, cannot be determined by this geographical criteria only.
Okay. Next question from Ms. Dainara Lausa from UP Diliman. What could be the possible role of ASEAN in the peacekeeping and confidence building in Korean Peninsula?
Afghan?
What could be the possible role of ASEAN in peacekeeping and confidence building in the Korean Peninsula?
Yes, as I mentioned, ASEAN as a forerunner of regional cooperation and also regional security building through the forum of ARF. It inspires South Korea, and the experience and lessons it learned, and also reputation ASEAN established as the mediator and also convener of all these meetings. And there are many political and security related intergovernmental meetings organized by ASEAN and ARF. And it can be also a very good source of emulation for South Korea. And I think that's one of the reasons why Korean government launched this new Southern policy and expanding the scope of cooperation to the area of security. And by doing so, we can also increase our consultation and cooperation. So ASEAN is a very precious partner for us in the matter like confidence building, and also bringing some real changes in North Korea. And I personally expect the great role of ASEAN in that process, and that helps develop, Northeast Asia security body. And I imagine, I mean, ASEAN, will they like it? I mean, competition organization in Northeast Asia, or ASEAN wants to be the only ASEAN cooperation body in this area. So it is also a kind of question, but I think because the two areas are quite related and the relation is getting closer ever, I think the peace and security in Northeast Asia is very much important for ASEAN. And if this process is benefited from the experience of ASEAN, then ASEAN's reputation, I mean, mother of this possible new Northeast organization would enhance its status. So I don't think two regional bodies are not in competition, but in kind of complementary. So yes, ASEAN's role is very much appreciated, and I hope South Korea's new policy will be used to maximum utilize this ASEAN's potential.
Thank you, sir. In the interest of time, we will only have last two questions, which were already raised in the webinar chat. So first, from Ms. Mary Joy Padilla. Her question is, will reunification between the two Koreas be more possible if the lineage of the Kim regime or dynasty ends?
If
the Kim regime ends, if the Kim dynasty ends.
Oh, no, it is not a matter of Kim's life. And I think the North Korean system, even though it is leadership, I mean, one great leadership regime, it is managed by a system also. So it is not a matter of the biological person's life. It's the supporting team around the leader. It determines the policy. And so with or without him, if there is some the need for, I mean, maybe he becomes sick again, and then North Korea will provide another and provide the same service to be the leader of the North Korea. So it is my personal opinion too. But I think North Korea is not, I mean, ruled by 36-year-old gentleman, Koreans only, but by the assistance of all experts around him. So let's keep that in mind. North Korea's system, not a person. So personal leadership is some type of their regime, but the appearance of one person or replaced with another, it is not too much related to unification.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have our last question from Sir Aaron Jedrabena from the Asia Pacific Pathways to Progress. So his question is actually two parts. So first part is, what do you think with Pyongyang's recent behavior to escalate and de-escalate tensions near the border? So what is the motivation behind this, I guess? And the next part is, is President Moon under attack from the opposition, or is he losing political capital?
If President Moon under attack?
From opposition, or is he losing political capital because it seems that his constructive engagement with DPRK is not paying off?
Yeah.
So I think if I can reframe the question, how is President Moon Jae-in's popularity decreasing, or is his decreasing popularity would affect his inter-Korean policies?
Yes, the reason why North Korea demolished the good building and other military measures taken, but now is taking back some of the announcements that they previously made. But their intention is to get draw the attention of the outside world, and they are doing so because they are very much crunched by the economic, United Nations Security Council sanctions, and told you that their economy is registering -6% growth, and that is really a grave concern for them. And so inside North Korea, there is a pros and cons about President Moon's policy, and some are he is too much the appeasement, and some think he is in the right track. But it is a healthy debate going on, and I hope, this healthy debate inside South Korean society will lead the government into the right direction about the policy, this policy of North Korea.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. And thank you very much, everyone. That concludes our open forum. So since we are about to end this webinar, we would like to thank everyone, to all of our participants, for joining us today in the last edition of the Korea and Asia webinar series. For more updates on future events by our organizers, you may visit the Facebook page of UP Korea Research Center at facebook.com/UPKRC, and the website of Seoul National University Asia Center at snuac.snu.ac.kr. You may also contact them through their email addresses found on your chat box, the very first messages on the chat box. So you can just scroll over there. And before we conclude, we would like to also acknowledge the assistance of the University Computer Center of UP Diliman for facilitating today's Zoom webinar. Thank you very much. And with that, we formally conclude this afternoon's webinar. We hope to see you again in our future events. Thank you and have a safe and pleasant afternoon. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us today.
Thank you very much.